most often in life, the opportunity ahead of you lies just on the other side of that line of fear kind of scenario. And so most of the time we don't see the opportunity or don't have the chance of an opportunity because we say no due to fear and not deciding to kind of face that and push through that. And so just been a number of things that have obviously happened because I just decided to just say yes and go for it.
Landry Fields grew up the oldest of 6 kids, watching his pastor father transition from ministry and starting over from scratch, with no money, no plan, and no guarantees. That image never left him. So whenever Landry bet everything on opening an insurance agency in 2019 with 0 days of insurance experience, a wife, 2 kids, and no plan B, he wasn't being reckless. He was running on something deeper. He built Nova Insurance from the ground up. He figured it all out the hard way, taught himself the business question by question, and slowly turned a scratch agency in Kentucky into a team of 9 people running at over $300,000 in revenue per employee. But the real turning point didn't happen inside his office. It happened on a stage he almost never stepped onto, in front of a room full of agents who had decades on him. And what he felt like at that moment changed everything about how he saw himself and where he believed Nova could go.
So we've got Landry Fields here, Nova Insurance in Lexington, Kentucky. And also that's your hometown, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Pretty much. I mean, I would say born and raised. I mean, surrounding counties and so forth for sure. And never more than within 45 minutes of Lexington for sure.
Yeah. Well, I want to start off with one of the things. I know you pretty good, and I would definitely call you a driven individual. Where do you feel like you got that drive from?
I honestly, I think that's sometimes just a wiring scenario, right? I mean, sometimes you don't know something about yourself, but it's always been there. I'm beholden to the Enneagram aspect a lot, which is I'm definitely kind of a 3, which the drive has always been it's been more of a competition with myself than any person necessarily, or a competition outside of me. It took me a long time to realize that, so I'd always, if I was real, I could really set my mind to certain things. There were certain things maybe I didn't care about. The things I really cared about, I could just go into such granular detail and hyper focus type of thing. But it was always kind of more of like my own strive for success internally, that I wouldn't fail myself type of idea. Now, it wasn't necessarily a responsibility feeling of failing other people. It was always a fear of kind of like failing myself. And so that's where really a lot of the drive came from. You back up to where 2019, I decided to kind of take a step out in faith there and open my own agency and with insurance, having never done a day's work in insurance in my life. And obviously I do not recommend that or at all suggest that to anyone. But I had some family in the insurance business that pointed me some doors, and I was, the brash idiot with a lot of blind ambition of like, I've done commercial sales for 10 years and managed this part of a contracting company locally. I can do this. I don't know insurance, but I can figure it out. I'm just going to bet on myself, which I love betting. If you're going to bet on yourself, love that. I think that's great and a good thing to do. So then I, decide I'm going to open a business, and I have to learn real quickly that to get over any kind of fear or pride, because I was like, I've got to ask questions that are going to be the most basic questions. I remember a specific time where I asked them a question in a room full of agents. I'm like, this is before AI, of course, so I could have just looked it up, but then I was like, this guy's talking about something specific that's very, very general as far as something that every insurance agent knows. But I'm like brand new. It's the day before my agency opened. I have to raise my hand in a room full of like 30 other agents and ask the dumbest question you can imagine with insurance. That's like, and I was like, I gotta know. So like, I open an insurance agency tomorrow. I have to know this answer. And so I quickly learned just how to ask. I had to ask questions because there was, at that time I had a wife and 2 kids relying on me as a single income household earner for our home. And I was like, there's no plan B here necessarily. So I've got to get over that. So that drive to kind of got amplified a little bit because I had people really relying on me, as you know, from our kids, my wife at the time, for sure. That was a big part of it too. But you know, but I think internally, most of the time, it's always been more of a failure internally that's driven me in most cases.
You know, you touched on several things there, and then also we were talking before. You know, one of them is kind of a race against yourself, not wanting to let yourself down. Another is that, you know, we talked about the fear, and obviously you really had to know it, so you had to overcome that fear of, you know, I may look like an idiot in front of everybody else. The and then also just, taking that step into a career that you hadn't been to. You know, you did mention also like about being wired, maybe potentially like that. Do you feel like that any of that stuff came from like home whenever you were growing up and just maybe watching how your parents were, or something they passed down to you, or just purely just
There's
wired like
definitely
that?
an aspect of that I think you have to that I think probably marries with some of that stuff internally, which was how oldest of six kids. So when you're an oldest child, there's usually definitely more of like this responsibility kind of thing that's placed upon you. But at the same time, Dad, I mean, he does really well now, but he was a pastor for many years, and so we really didn't have much money when he pulled out of that kind of paid ministry scenario. And you quickly realize like my family's not going to be able to afford college for all of us or afford to buy me a car. And so early on and watching my dad honestly starting over in a brand new career at a similar age that I did, and going from honestly a pastor to a financial advisor into a career he'd never done a day's work in his life as well. Like, was also at the age when I started my agency, something I really looked back to and was like, connected with him a lot because of that. But yeah, just that idea of like, I gotta figure out how to be entrepreneurial. I got to figure out how to work and provide and save up for these things, to buy a car, and paid for half of my college tuition and stuff like that. So I think in general, there's a work ethic scenario that you can just work hard and that doesn't amount to anything, but there's still an aspect of like working hard where you kind of have to learn what hard work looks like at the same time, I think too, to be able to understand that as well.
Yeah, oh for sure. Yeah, well said. So now I know a little bit that you have a music background, and you already said that you jumped into insurance, and obviously it wasn't modeled at home because your father was a pastor, then moved into financial planning, about the same time you started your business. So,
Yeah.
so what did you do before insurance, and then how did you decide to go to insurance?
Yeah, got married and then found a job locally. But the whole time, or not the whole time, I did that for 10 years. For the first 5 years, and then is where I was really kind of dedicating a lot of nights and weekends to traveling and playing music in a local regional band that had some cool, highlight stories for sure. Opening up for some people here and there that people would know. But then that kind of door closed. Was very grateful for it before we ended up having kids, and realized got enough of a taste of it to realize I was much happier being at home and seeing friends, because life on the road at some point gets really, really old for the common person. But I've always had this artistic side of me for sure, and this creative side of me, and I mean it's a whole nother topic that I think we were created to be creative, kind of idea. But that I'd always played music and even taught piano for a couple of years. I just didn't have any patience for teaching piano, but realized I was like, I'd always been doing music, and then decided, around the time I was going to start the agency, I kind of pulled back from a lot of things. But since I've started the agency, I've only played a few times, period, type of thing for music now, outside of like my piano that I have sitting in my house. But I had a full recording, package type of studio of stuff, and it's all packed up, and I haven't touched it at all, which is crazy to me. But it gives to the point that I decided I was like, I'm going to start a business. I found an opportunity with a major carrier that was able to give me a direct appointment from a scratch agency program they had. Why they gave it to me, having no insurance background, I have no idea, but I'm very grateful. After my father-in-law kind of pointed me to some doors to kind of knock on, that those did indeed open. But well, that reminds me, I didn't even. They were like, well, you have to be licensed before you can even apply. So I'm like, well, okay, I guess we'll go figure out how to get a license type of scenario. So I go figure out, I mean, again, it would have been a lot easier with AI stuff like that, but I go figure out how to get licensed with insurance, do all the tests. Ironically, I am the idiot with 5 tests and 5 licenses, meaning I have the personal lines license as well because no one told me and didn't know that that property and casualty takes care of the personal lines license. So I have 5 licenses on my certificate here, just those things. And so I like take that back and they're like, okay, great. Well, now you need to put together a business plan. I'm like, okay, we've never done that before. Let's go figure out how to do it. So it's been getting over the fear of like, I've never done it. And I was just like, you know what, I'm going to keep trying new things here. But then the creative process wise, that's why I've fallen in love with just the business idea of like, the tech stack and the processes and KPIs and SOPs and all those things. You get to be very creative when you're the business owner as far as building it how you want. And so that's been a really cool experience. It's an experience that like I've learned it. So like, I'm glad I didn't know everything I know now about how much work that would be, because I probably would have gotten cold feet, knowing what I know now, but I wouldn't trade it now. Obviously, I'm glad I went through all that. And, as a business owner and learning this stuff, it's been very rewarding in that sense to kind of come out on this other side of kind of an initial startup that's definitely going to make it, and I think starting to begin thriving and so forth. So yeah, that would be a bit about that background.
Yeah, quite a journey there. Yeah, it sounds like you had some positive. Sounds like your father-in-law is a positive figure in your life also. That's also helped give you a little bit of guidance. So you both sides sound like your father and your father-in-law.
Yeah, I mean they both give you guidance. I think that's what a loving father type of idea does. Is they're not going to try to force you into something that's them. That they're going to kind of be there for anything to kind of help come alongside you to kind of based upon the way you're wired or your dreams or aspirations type of scenario. And so, I mean, I think there's probably a scenario where they thought I would fall flat on my face as far as not failing the job, but like failing to get an appointment. As you know, with insurance, you got to get appointments.
Yeah, it's tough.
So I think they probably were correct in thinking like, oh, there's no way he's going to get direct appointments out of the gate, having never done insurance before. So I will grant that was probably a valid one I would have myself if I was in their shoes, but it definitely has worked out.
You're going through these lessons of having to figure out all these different pieces of the puzzle as you're going through it. And you got a picture you shared with me we're going to talk about here in a second, but this next question may be pointed towards that. You can tell me.
Yeah.
But at some point, you all of a sudden were like, I can really do something with this. And just like you went from just, I don't know what I'm doing, to all of a sudden there was an epiphany of like, I think I can really build something good out of this. Tell me, I know there was that moment. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Maybe when do you remember that happened, or maybe kind of how that felt?
Yeah, and that will correspond when I get to that point here with the picture for sure. But I remember starting the agency, and it was very early on. I'd only been open for like 6 months, and a local guy a lot of people know that's not in insurance anymore, ironically, but he pointed me to some of these Facebook groups, and there was that IAOA one that was popular at one point in time, but there was more of a conference that he talked about, and I'm like, oh, there's conferences, okay, there's people there trying to learn and figure out things, and there's technology and vendor companies. And so I remember going to San Diego 2020, ironically right before COVID, to that conference, and just being it was just this eye-opening of like experience of like, oh, there's a lot more people that also think outside the box of trying to push. And as you know, the insurance industry, it can be very slow in adapting and evolving in that sense, but there was definitely that excitement, right? Like, there's a change starting to happen in the industry. Probably perfect timing for me, because I would have probably gotten really frustrated with where technology was if I had started any sooner, if I'm being honest there. But there was this community aspect of like, we're trying to help each other all succeed. That was probably a little bit newer to older generations before us that have been in this thing for 30, 40 years. So sharing of ideas, sharing of tips and tricks, half the value was sitting there rubbing shoulders with people and having conversations, or hey, have you used this company, or what has your experience been with this? And you're just making friends. And so it was really a great way for me to connect and build connect with people in a community. And through that, and I grew to have some of the closest friends I have now in the industry, and a lot of them are in the industry for sure. And that's obviously how me and you connected with some different things like that. But that was just such a great thing for me early on of, again, when I had no idea where do I even turn, because you can learn insurance stuff to an extent, and the carriers can kind of teach you this, that, or the other, but no one teaches you how to run a business at the end of the day. And you can read a lot of stuff and it's helpful, but it's the same thing with like parenting. It's like, in some ways, like you got to just do it, but you're still asking questions from other people who have been through the process before, whatever stage you're in. And that's just, I think, anything in life that was just a very monumental aspect as far as making connections and being able to text people and mentors and things, just this question or that question, or what are your thoughts on this? And people were so willing to give up of their time, energy, and wisdom that it was just so invaluable for me back at that time. And so, I think that would lead me to the photo there, which was in October of 2024, earlier on that year.
Yeah, it's a photo of you. You got a nice white jacket on, jeans, and obviously speaking in front of a group of insurance professionals.
We're at Indy Tech 2024, and this was a scenario where I've been asked to be a speak. So there's twofold to wrap this whole story from the beginning of our conversation, actually, with the fear part, which was I was told, asked to kind of talk a little bit more about the AI side of things in a breakout kind of room. And, I'm like, okay, that'd be cool. Maybe there's like 20, 25 people there. So there's twofold scenario. One, I was just super excited to be able to kind of, excited, but also afraid in the sense that, like, I had due to some family and AI and this, that, or the other, in my natural way of like, I've got to try to build this business, and I don't have all the funds in the world like a lot of legacy agencies do, to like, I've got to figure out how to grow with as little money as possible type of scenario. So there was a necessity aspect that I've been really leaning into processes and automation and stuff like that. But the AI had started to take off, and have a brother-in-law that was in AI security. So we just had natural conversations over constantly throughout, every Sunday, or when the kids were playing ball, this, that, or the other, we're constantly talking about it. And so I learned a lot and quickly realized that it was something that was very much lacking in our traditional space of insurance, that people were asking me a lot more of those questions. And so it was kind of this moment where I started realizing, oh, I have something I can actually give back to people now, and kind of maybe it's not the direct people that influenced me or helped mentor me along the way, but it's something that I can then in return give back as well. Now that they may have more and that's the fear part. It was the kind of the idea of, I'm going to be speaking to a bunch of people who probably know more about insurance than I do, but there is some areas that I do know a lot about that can help hopefully bring some clarity or constructive kind of game planning for them to like be able to utilize that will be beneficial for them. But then the picture itself is actually from where I was going to be in a small breakout room, but then last second was asked to take on the main stage role and replace somebody who could not make it. And that was one of those moments where I'm sitting there.
And, whoa.
I was like, that's terrifying. I've been on a stage, I played music. I've done this other event type of thing with a lot of churches for many, many years. So I was very used to being on a stage, but I was like, this was a stage of scenarios where, again, I feel like I have more to gain from everybody else in the crowd just because I have not been in insurance. Everybody I meet in insurance has been in it for, 10 years. It's always like multiple decades or so, or a decade or multiple decades at this point. So I was always still trying to just be a sponge to everything from everybody with that to have this feeling of, well, I don't know near as much as them, and I'm not deserving to, what can they really gain from me? And so really kind of had to just work through that idea again, back to the Born Fearless idea of like, no, I can do this. And there is some value I can bring that, and this is a great way to finally kind of return that favor in many ways. And so accepted it, even though it was terrifying to kind of switch my speaking engagement to the main stage area, but did so. And I think to kind of put a closing part of the fear aspect on it, which is I've learned that most often in life, the opportunity ahead of you lies just on the other side of that line of fear kind of scenario. And so most of the time we don't see the opportunity or don't have the chance of an opportunity because we say no due to fear and not deciding to kind of face that and push through that. And so there's just been a number of things that have obviously happened because I just decided to just say yes and go for it with that. And it's been a wild kind of 18 months since then, for sure. And as I've kind of grown in the AI side of things, I guess, in our industry.
Oh, for sure. I would have to definitely say that you're recognized as one of the leading experts in the circles that I'm in when it comes to AI. And I remember, I'm going to come back to something, a really, I think, important lesson that you pointed out to there in a second. But a lesson I learned, I don't remember how long ago it was now, it's a decade or so probably now, but I remember getting invited to the first time I ever got asked to be on an agency council. And I remember thinking, I'm from a super small town. I mean, it's 4,000 people in my town. And I sometimes would sit in a room with a lot of other people that had much bigger agencies than me because of just rural agency and whatever else that I felt like had way more experience, legacy agencies, things like that. And I remember getting asked to this thing and sitting there in the room, looking around the room and thinking like, man, all these people know more than I do. But then I know we're both believers, and I felt like the Lord spoke to me and said, if you were asked to be here, it was for a reason. And I just thought about the person who asked me to be there that I highly respected. And obviously if they thought I belonged there, then I needed to give my opinion or speak about what I knew. And I mean, I think that's one of the things that you're attesting to. But then also, I think another thing that I think you would agree with is when we do that and we cross over that fear line, one thing, and then the other is just that we start giving whatever it is that we do have. It's amazing how much we receive back. It just seems like we get so much more back than what we give. I don't know,
100%.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I think that's one of those reasons why I encourage people to go ahead and just give of yourself freely. If someone asks you for something, don't be afraid that they're going to steal your idea or whatever else. I mean, ideas are a dime a dozen, really. But it's, they may or may not implement it. However, I promise you will gain more back from sharing whatever the things are you share.
Yep, agreed.
And I think also, I think that life lesson that you shared is incredibly important. I think for anybody, whether you're a business owner or not, you're an employee or whatever, is that, right across that fear line is so often, that just kind of crossing over into, I don't know, the next level of success or the next level of knowledge or the next level of confidence or just there's so much reward right past that line that, and so many of us we get to it and we draw back. But if we push through it, all of a sudden something, things happen that we just couldn't have even expected. So I think you're saying that this was one of those pivotal moments for you. Was it because of the fear and just you shifting from student to teacher?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was just that competition with myself that I always thought I was going to, my fear of always feeling like I was going to fall flat on my face with my business or my my achievements or whatever, that I was like, it was kind of a culmination of like, I definitely am doing something right kind of scenario as a business owner and so forth. And I've definitely, I guess, made it from the sense that the ship's not going to go down type of thing. I don't think type of idea, and that way,
Right.
But at the moment, as well as like I could give back and I could, really kind of help give some insight, and there was something I could give to others in return from everything that had been given me. But then at the same time, like I said, getting over that fear aspect. So yeah, culmination of a lot of those things was that representation for sure.
Yeah. It sounds like you're also saying that maybe that kind of point kind of helped solidify this confidence in yourself as a business owner.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was like, yeah, that's the thing. That's a good point. I think for sure that was like there was things I was doing right that other people could gain knowledge from, or something that could help them in their businesses. So yeah, 100%. You know, when I start really breaking that down for sure.
What are some things that you've learned as a business owner the last, that I guess in the last, let's say the last 2 years, since maybe 2024 really, that you wish you would have known, or maybe you would like to have told Landry of 2019?
I've never one that's really dealt. It's hard for me to do those things necessarily like that about telling myself, because I'm always more of the glass half full, forward thinking. I'm not going to devote a lot of time to like regrets in the past or overthinking things. So that's why it's I think hard for me to figure out what would I tell myself in that sense. But again,
Well,
I think it's probably just more or less the patience side of things. Like, it's not a sprint. Again, it's a marathon in many ways, and you definitely learn the lessons. Every lesson you learn along the way is valuable in one way or another. So whether it's hiring, whether it's firing, whether it's this company in tech, whether it's failure in business and sales where you miss something, there's just looking at everything as an opportunity to learn from as well. And you're not going to get there overnight, and it's going to be a slow journey, but everybody's on the same path. Like, very few people ever get to sprint, and usually if they've sprinted to the point, it's cause for pause, because they feel something probably could be going awry very soon if so.
Yeah. Well, I think a few different things I've heard you say, I think were good life lessons, is one of them is don't be afraid to go through the struggle, that you learn a lot through it.
Yeah.
Know that it's going to take time. As you said, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Don't be afraid of the fear line. Go across it. And then also surround yourself with people who are willing to answer your difficult questions. That you can feel comfortable in asking.
And that will also push you, I think, would be the other part of that too.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I like that. I like people in my life that are going to push me, that also aren't afraid to say, "But that's a bad idea. This is why."
And we say push you, but I think we should. That's not a great way of saying it. I think the better way of saying it is that will also pull me. And when I say pull me, it being like, no, you can achieve better heights type of scenario. And usually they're helping, like, you can achieve a bigger height type of scenario. It's the idea of like either the patent string scenario, where usually you have to pull the string if you want the string to go somewhere. If you push it, it doesn't really go anywhere. Or if you're down in the hole, it's much easier to like pull somebody up out of a lower level or a hole type of scenario than to try to push them out type of thing. So in some ways I kind of overanalyze. Maybe that's the pastor's kid in me as far as analogies go. I'm like, maybe it's
that's a good one.
Pull us kind of scenario. So yeah.
No, I think that's good. I mean, you're looking for people who, in whatever aspect, have been there before, right? That have, whatever the different thing is, whether it's like just understanding maybe how to get higher, or how to pick an office location, or how to market, or whatever.
Yeah.
You want someone that's already been there that can kind of pull you up to where they're at.
Yeah.
I think I've heard the analogy too about like the chair. It's easier, pull someone up. You can pull someone up into the chair so they can see better, or see from your vantage point, right? So no, I think that's a great analogy. Well, let's shift a little bit. Let's shift from what we were talking about to, let's talk about kind of where you're at now, and just kind of maybe how you're leading today. So kind of just tell me a little bit about tell me a little about the structure of your agency.
Yeah, so
who's doing what and kind of stuff like that.
So we got 3 agents, 2 CSRs, a life person. It's all changed a lot since you've been up here, actually.
Yes,
a business partner, and then a virtual assistant employee. So I think we're 8 or 9 individuals now in many ways, which I'm starting to take on more of the role of working on the business than in the business anymore. And so I'm in that transition right now for sure. And literally today was like told, account managers and so forth like that. We turned over. So a lot of my renewals that I'd personally been doing still in some respects over, as well as like I can't take on any new business. I'm truly working on everything's changing with technology and AI so fast. I've got to devote to really just a lot of educating myself on this stuff, so I know where we're going and being able to put things in place to help us succeed at a quicker rate. Because ultimately, I mean, the goal is, especially in insurance, it's more a big measurement is revenue per employee. And so if you can get that revenue, I truly believe, the best practices usually in the stance of like 180,000 in revenue per employee to, 200, 250 maybe revenue 1,000 per employee is kind of the best practices. We already run at over 300,000 per revenue per employee, and not counting the agents. I'm talking about the true account manager, scenarios, people who are not bringing in the business. But I truly believe that with technology, AI, and leveraging my business, that'll become more and more of a marketing and technology company in the next 5 years. That we will be able to get to 750,000 in revenue is my ultimate goal that I think is possible by the end of the decade per employee. And so really that just changes so many things when you think about that from our business standpoint. And I think a big way to think about it too is just AI. If you really think of AI as a employee, and I've got this picture of kind of like a organizational chart, and we built that into the organizational chart to kind of give that idea of like, it can truly be an assistant. Every single one of you here in the agency will have an AI assistant. Those assistants might be sending things off to other AI agents to do certain things, whether it's renewals or quote stuff or this, that, or the other. But, in many ways, our agency will look very, very much like by 2030, we'll look internally like a marketing company to see how big we can get the faucet open, to a technology company that does all the grunt work, allowing us as humans inside the agency to do one of two things. One, focus on the human-to-human relationship portion when, crap hits the fan, or businesses and things that you still need a human-to-human thing, as well as the idea of being able to really focus in on culture, because I think there'll be more and more people that are looking for jobs if we're going a little bit more doom and gloom at some point down the road here. So therefore, getting people who really truly want to work here kind of scenario, and find a place that they or feel valued, have a lot of things we can kind of hopefully pour more and more into them from a cultural standpoint. I think it's going to be another part of that focus from the human side of things that will where we'll look by 2030. Yeah,
I certainly think there's going to be a lot of change in the job market here in the next couple of years. Definitely this next decade. A lot of things are going to change in there. I think there'll be some jobs that'll move more into the labor field too, which we actually could use that to some degree. I think a lot of our labor industries are really struggling for good quality help there as well. It's not just the professional area. I mean, there's lots of areas that are just struggling with that. So, in a lot of ways, I think it would be good. With those senses, so congrats to you for making this next step professionally, where you're shifting more into working on the business. Where do you still feel like you have time that just kind of leaks from the core group of things that you feel like you need to focus to hit this goal that you've got for 2030?
I would actually answer that in a different way, which is the realization 24 months ago, probably-ish, that there's a lot of things I'm not the best at. And if you have that whole understanding about yourself, that and reading the book called Rocket Fuel, which is part of the EOS system, that they're pointed me to, that usually there's an idea within corporations or businesses where the ones that really thrive usually have a person who's more the visionary role and someone who's more of the integrator role. And so realizing I'm definitely much the visionary role, but I do a lot of things and start a lot of things. And I've seen this so often in just people and that I've interacted with in our space, et cetera. But they never, and I'm not this either, so I understand it. they never finish. There's so many things, 80% of things they never finish. They're like, oh, I never got around to finishing that or doing that or integrating. And so that integrator role, I started realizing was going to be invaluable for us to truly scale the business to what it needed to be, and also give me back my time into being able to focus in on the things that I thrive in, really love to do, and so forth. And so I would answer your question by saying that I've kind of fixed that in some ways because of that. And over the summer in 2025, was able to finally partner with a guy I'd known for 6 years in the industry locally, that we very much realized we were good buddies, that he was from on the carrier side, but he, was very much that integrator role personality. And so he found an agency to kind of buy. He kind of bought it / we merged it in to Nova at the exact same moment, basically. And
nice.
so that's been an awesome way to kind of really, because let's be honest, owning a business as a solopreneur is very lonely island many times. And so I've realized through different acquaintances I'd come in, friendships I'd come to have in the insurance business, that that can be done really, really well, and many times that I'd much rather give up a piece of the whole pie or give up the whole pie for a big piece of a much bigger pie. And a lot of times it's more fun doing it so with somebody, because your friends, your family, they're not in it as much, and even your acquaintances in the business can celebrate with you, like yourself or other stuff like that. But there's something different about having a true partner like I have, in my life with my wife, being my life partner, and we celebrate each other. But it's hard for her to celebrate business stuff or things that she's like doesn't understand or want to really care about at the end of the day. And so that's been a really, really awesome, wise decision, I would say, on my part, that I did, and has given me back a lot more of that time, energy, focus, and so forth, that I was starting to get a lot more of just burnt out, I would say, and just feeling like there's so much to do and I can't get it all done type of feeling in that role. That was originally as the original creator of Nova.
Yeah. You touched on a little bit about like different business owners just struggling to get the different things done. Sometimes it's because, like you said, they just don't really have the skill set, or maybe they get frustrated because they don't feel like they have the skill set, or just managing the time. Where do you feel like most business owners probably, or maybe specifically insurance agency owners, really struggle with them getting out of their way and being able to kind of hit the next gear in their business, so to speak?
If you started the business, a lot of times it's you think you've done every aspect of it. So thinking, just not being honest with yourself and thinking that you're the one that can do the best job of everything. And there's a fear aspect. Again, we talk about that again, that oh, well, what if I give up control? But you really have to try and not be afraid to fail at it type of scenario, giving up control. As I've learned that if you're going to fail, just try to fail fast type of scenario. Like, don't be afraid to fail. And if you fail, just fail fast so you can get closer and closer to the right answer at the end of the day. And that's that's the quickest way to get to the best way to do it. So giving up the control and release is something hard for entrepreneurs that have started a business and it's their bread and their baby, type of thing. But I'm much, much happier on this side, having given up some of that control for sure, and having the responsibility and load shared with me now, kind of scenario. And I really thrive and really want to do everything efficiently. And so at least I'm humble enough of like, hey, is that a good idea? Do you have a good idea? Give me all your ideas, guys. Like, let's find. But I realize that the agents or the staff, they want to be led, and so it's hard for me to lead and gain all of their insight at the same time, because then they feel distracted / confused. Where are we going? You mentioned this. If you're like, hey, I thought about this. What do you all think about this? Scenario. And so it's hard to either gain the true opinion of people or the buy-in of people if you're kind of like constantly trying to evolve in the business and lead at the same time. That it can get very confusing, and realize with my staff that was just not fair to them several years ago, which is why it started me down this role of like, and I would like to find somebody where we can ideas off of and figure out what's the best route here. And maybe there's a scenario where you go to the staff at some point to say, hey, after all this, we really believe, either this or this. Maybe there's something decision-wise. Would you all have an opinion here type of thing? But that was a big part for our staff to kind of, and, I have a brother in the agency, and he's the one that was like finally kind of told me that. And I was just like, oh man, you're right. So I think it's not also just not being afraid to take criticism or ask where you're failing. It's probably another part of that. Thankfully, he was willing enough to give me that feedback but being able to ask where am I failing from people is a hard question to ask. But again, humble yourself to really ask if you want to really grow and thrive beyond where you're at right now.
Right. Oh, 100%. No, I love all that. I'm going to ask you a question here in a second about picking a partner, business partner.
Okay.
But I had a conversation earlier with an agent this morning, and agency that it's him and a partner, and he's got a leadership team that filters through the questions and planning and stuff like that. And he's got a pretty good sized agency, and he's not a very old gentleman. And I think that humility and that insight, like what you're talking about, I think is a lot of the key of why he's been able to grow his agency as successful as it is because of that humility, knowing that he doesn't have all the answers, being willing to circle himself around others that can help contribute to the thinking process, right? But the difficult piece of all of that is knowing who to put at that other seat. Now, I've met your partner in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
Fantastic individual. After talking with him for a few minutes, I was like, yeah, these two work fantastic.
He's my numbers guy, and I am not a numbers guy. I just need to be like, can we afford this? Does it make sense? I do not care.
It's not even that, but it's also just y'all. I mean, y'all just really seem to sync well, and both just even personalities just seem to complement each other really well.
To speak to that integrated role is designed to really amplify and see the vision of the visionary person, and their role and the design of that is to truly, all right, there's the vision. How am I going to help us get to that vision that the visionary person has? And so that's why, if it's going to work well, that's when it works really, really, really well, because you're on the same page. And so if you have two people that are visionaries, that's not going to work very, very much, right? Because you're both looking at two different things, etc. If you're two integrators, you might become stagnant because you don't have a lot of vision for where you're going. And so it's truly that idea, like I said, the book Rocket Fuel, of one being a visionary and two being an integrator. And if you take those tests and be honest with yourself, am I one of these two? And that's where we realized, I think this can really work, kind of scenario. And I had been building, and he saw that vision of where I was building, what I was working on. I was just having a hard time getting it there because, again, it's hard to do both. The leading of where ahead while also constantly looking back to make sure things are getting done, or the stuff is getting finished out as you've wanted it to get done. And so if you can both be doing that and on the same page, I mean, it's been incredible. And we're constantly every day it's just like we're so excited because, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some stance sometimes where we're maybe not quite on the same page, and we can work through that. But ultimately, I mean, we really have a vision. Here's where we're going. And because of that vision, he's definitely that integrator role where, all right, we're going to get there. And this is some of the steps that we need to get there, or how allowing me to kind of continue pushing forward in that has been a huge blessing, huge blessing.
Yeah, I think you need to find yourself on a stage at some point talking about your journey from solopreneur to having a partner, and like how you went through the process. We can't get too deep into it, but what would be a couple of tips that you would give to someone if they're like, okay, I'm listening to Landry, and yes, I understand 100% what he's saying.
Yeah. That's
me. I got no idea. Where do I just start? What would you say?
Start where? Sorry, say that again.
Define. I know that I'm where Landry was. I know I needed a partner. And so how do I go about starting to find this person and
Okay.
and understanding what my need really is. And what would
I would say start with the book because but then I went through a couple different individuals and one that came here and hung out with me, see if he was going to move here. But I think it's a lot easier when you can define and show the vision and someone's like, yeah, I get that. I see that. And they're more willing to, you can do it in two ways actually. So the book lays out, you could hire the person, but you could also partner with a person. So there's two avenues there. So it might not be where you have to have a partner. It could be where you have, in essence, the integrator as a true employee role partner type of idea that can work as well. But it's you have to be very open and honest with the conversations of like, and then a weekly vision of meetings and this, so we go through weekly meetings like. And there's a guide in that book of like what you should be doing every week with those meetings or the quarterly meetings or the yearly planning meetings that it has laid out for us already in the book. And so it's honestly just like read through the book. If you have somebody that's really considering it, have them take those tests that are there to kind of see if they're truly that integrator role. And then outside of that, you obviously have to make sure, at least in many ways, you guys are on the same page life-wise. It doesn't have to be exactly like from all theologies or this, that, or the other, but you got to make sure you still are you're going to spend a lot of time with each other, so you still have to make sure you're friends at the same day as well. But also at the same time, I've realized the value of you got to write the divorce before it happens from a business sense, that I don't want to lose friends because of something, and people go into businesses or others like that too often, just thinking, oh, we'll always like each other and be fine and great. But you got to have those conversations about, all right, what does the breakup look like if if it ever comes to that, and to find that up front kind of idea as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you should do that whenever you're looking at getting married. But I think whenever you're a business partner, it may be doomed. I don't think your spouse would appreciate that either, that approach. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in that with business owners. Is like, look, I'm not looking for an exit, but let's just go ahead and just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
So if we get into this thing and we both just say this isn't for me, this ain't gonna work.
Exactly. And a lot of times it could just be a short stint scenario of like, we'll just agree to part ways after if it's within the first year type of idea, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that's I think you gave really good advice for the process. I do think the EOS system, the whole in the books, fantastic resources to help walk you through figuring out who you are, and then also how to find that person. But also I think what you said too there about just coming, visiting with you, spending some time with you, just like on a really personal level, making sure that you align somewhat core values, and to be verbatim, right? And y'all don't have to both have the same Bible verse that you love, but just having some things that really, the important things that line up, and also being willing to talk about, if it doesn't work, we can still be friends. This is how we exit and stay friends. And I think that's a lot of humility in that, and a lot of wisdom in that. For sure. Well, let's man, it was an excellent conversation with you, Landry. I always learn a lot. Very impressed with you as an individual. I've watched you grow up, so to speak, in your insurance agency. Very impressed with you. Give you opportunity, just any sort of last closing thoughts you have, and also just tell about your agency, where you're at, and how people find you.
Yeah, so there's only 2 Landry Fields, so it's easy to find me there on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. Happy to connect, give some insights when I can on different stuff, and got some tools and things that are helpful, I think, for people and agencies growing and wanting to learn more about the AI side of things, but also willing to meet new people in the industry and make new friends for sure. So definitely reach out. I'm in the bourbon capital and horse capital of the world, so it's a pretty great place, as Bo has found out, to kind of come visit.
Yeah, it's always a beautiful place.
So for sure.
Yeah, beautiful place.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. There's magical stuff that happens there in your neighborhood.
That's right.
For sure, it's beautiful, beautiful. Well, brother, again, thank you very much for joining.
Appreciate it, Joe.